we are still in Edo State, but then we go back to the story around a mob attack on a couple of travelers. About 16 of them were said to have been killed after wrong profiling. So to help us understand this better, we have a public affairs analyst, Ibrahim Momoh. Ibrahim, it's nice to have you around. Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you for having me on the show.
Okay, so now incidences of jungle justice have gone on unabated in Nigeria despite condemnations. What do you consider as the triggers?
Thank you very much. Oftentimes, jungle justice is triggered by disinformation or misinformation and the raise of false alarm. It's also a function of rumor mongering and, a lack of cohesion, national cohesion among different ethnic nationalities in the state, in the country, I should say. In this particular instance, the first trigger was that people were traversing the community, Uromi community, from a particular section of the country, from the north. And so that was the first trigger. There's this kind of distrust among ethnic nationalities in the country. So that for me is the first trigger for this one. But generally, it is for me a lack of fellow feeling, because even if there were doubts, even though there were misconceptions, or there were genuine fears of the character of the individuals who were victims of this mob criminal conduct, the ideal thing is to report to the security services. But the irony was that in this particular instance, it was the Edo State-owned vigilantes, the Edo Security Network, as they call them, that raised the alarm upon, fetching the vehicle, the trailer, in which they were traveling from Port Harcourt through Edo State to Kano. And so the security services, Edo State Security Network, or what they call the local vigilante, which are funded by the state government, who ordinarily ought to protect life and properties, were the ones who were not guilty of raising the alarm that led to the arson, the murder, and the killings and the burning of these innocent Nigerians.
Okay, so according to reports, Ibrahim, I mean, it's a case of maybe wrong or ethnic profiling. Does it also spotlight issues around insecurity fears and identity crisis?
Yes, insecurity fears is not exactly the issue here, but identity crisis is perhaps a much more apt description of what's happened here. Who does profiling? Whose duty it is to profile? Is it a mob? Is it unintelligent, uneducated, and if I may, uncivilized indigents or citizens of a community or of a state? Or is it the security services that are so empowered? If the idea ordinarily, what ought to have happened would have been, if they were criminals, even if they were assuming they were criminals, even though they were criminals, the proper thing to do would have been to invite the security forces, maybe the police in the first instance, who would now arrest, interrogate, and possibly prosecute these criminals. But what happened here was that a vehicle was stopped, and the occupants, being people of ethnic nationalities from the north, were searched, and then guns were found in a trailer in which they were traveling in. A trailer, this articulated vehicle, very long one, which they were traveling, and there were about 30 of them in the vehicle on their way to Kano. And then the mob swooped in, the vigilante, local vigilante, the Edo State-owned security network moved in, raised the alarm that these were kidnappers, and then the indigents swarmed in In fact, the videos circulating of this incident are a gory sight to behold. Individuals were beaten with cudgels and wood, and they were burnt while still alive with tires and on the bonfire. These are prehistoric. This is primordial. These are, characters that are not, these are mundane. They're not what you expect in the 21st century. So that is what it is. When you have that kind of ethnic rivalry, when there are profiling, that wrong profiling of individuals, it is not a crime to come from a section of the north. If you are from the north or you are from the south, that is not a crime. It's an accident. It is not even an accident of history. It is a fact of existence. It's not an accident of history. The mere fact that they were from the north, they were traversing an Uromi in the southern part of Nigeria, it's not a criminal offense. What I think is a criminal offense, and I think that is why I appreciate the state government, the state governor, for calling it out, and the federal government too, the president for also calling it out, is that Nigerians there should be freedom of movement. And if there are criminal conduct, it is not resolved by mob action. It is something that ought to be reported to security forces, who then take action of investigating, and if found culpable, prosecuting the criminal elements.
All right, just to wrap things up, Ibrahim, now, according to Amnesty International, about 555 victims of mob violence were documented between 2012 and 2023, and out of that, 57 were killed. Now, you've said what should have been done, but then the buck stops in front or at the table of the government, both at the national and sub-national level. What decisive steps must be taken, most especially now, to regulate the activities of vigilantes and, of course, prevent mob attacks?
The first issue that ought to have been discussed is, or that ought to have been done, is that vigilantes, is it within is it within the concurrent list of activities? It is not. Local securitization ought to be in the residual list. That is where it belongs. It is ideally the local governments that ought to be involved in vigilante, local security. That is called local for a purpose. It ought to be the local government, because the entire country, yes, divided into 36 states and the FCT, is also importantly divided into 744 local government areas. The failure to empower, to allow the local governments to function at full capacity is the root of the major challenges we have. I have spoken to this, I've written severally on this, that the way out of Nigeria's quagmire, Nigeria's challenges, has to be the local government. Whether it is food security, whether it is food security as a form of security, whether it is national security as a form of security, whether it is human security, also in a contemporary sense, security, it ought to be the first line should have been the local government. But very often we are seeing that even this vigilante, this mob that raised the alarm, and they were supposedly the ones who were supposed to provide security, they were employed by the state government.
All right.
Local government does not have a say in situating the affairs or activities of these vigilante groups. Ideally, if the local government were in charge, the report would have gone to the local government secretariat. Uromi is a local government headquarter. It is the headquarter of Eastern Northeast local government area of Edo State. Ideally, if it was under the purview, the activities were under the purview of the local government, and it was even in the headquarters of the local government, it would have been easier to manage the mob action, the arson, the wrong profiling, and all the criminal activities that are coming would not have happened.
Oh, so I actually guess. Yeah, I understand. Ibrahim Momoh, we might just append the conversation right there. We kindly appreciate your contributions on the news at this time. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.